All right. Welcome back to Moving Forward. I'm Don Green from Gordon State College.
I'm Tony. How's it going?
And then we have our bodiless producer for this program.
Hi, I'm Lainey Eisen, and I'm on the soundboard.
And today we're going to be talking about career exploration. So I got to ask you guys, how did you figure out initially what you wanted to pursue for a career?
Lainey, what do you think?
I can start. I'm kind of like the person who had almost always had it figured out, but not really. When I was 3 years old, I moved to California with my family, and my mom signed all of my siblings and I up to do an audition for a drama acting school. And it was the first time I had ever auditioned, sung, and done anything in front of a camera. And I just remember really enjoying it. And then my parents were like, you got accepted into this school. But we never ended up going through with it because I think it ended up being a scam. It was it was really expensive. And they were like, we would represent you through our school, but there's no guarantee that you would book anything.
Right.
So we didn't do that, but that was what peaked for me. And so throughout elementary school and middle school and high school, I was doing talent shows and being a part of theater and community theater. And then at one point in high school, I actually changed from wanting to be an actor to wanting to be an animator because I really love animation. I like the process of it and being able to draw things. I'm not the best drawer, but I just liked the process of it. And then we did a career expo my 9th grade year of high school, and then I saw this drama program at Oakland University in Michigan, and I was like, I want to go because I think they are one of the top drama programs in the country at Oakland. And they had a lot of alumni, and then I ended up moving here, and so I couldn't go. But I'm glad I came to Gordon because I got the experience that I was wanting to go and get at Oakland. So that's how I got into my career path.
That's great. I stumbled into mine by accident. I was talking in an earlier episode about I went to college for pre-med, then ended up in pre-law, and then stumbled into theater. But what really clicked for me was actually when I saw the power of a good college professor. My college experience was great. And it was the person who's the head of philosophy at the school where I went. And I knew that was what I wanted to do. So for me, when I think on my education, it's about clicking into wanting to be a teacher. Not so much even being a theater teacher. That's what I have a talent for. I think I've said before, I even stumbled into the design aspect of things by accident. I worked in the shop and then found that I was good at that and found it rewarding. So, I think I've wanted to be a teacher for ever since I saw that in my undergrad experience. So yeah, that was what worked for me.
Well, you guys have nailed a couple of things on the list for career exploration because quite often students and parents come to me and say, I have no clue or we have no clue concerning careers and how to make those decisions. And there is a little bit of science to it. There really is. There's a process that you can follow loosely to help you to better understand it. But it takes participation from the student to be able to make those decisions. And a couple of them that you touched on are knowing yourself, really studying yourself and better understanding who you are and what gets you excited, right? What you're passionate about. That's a big one. And for a lot of young people, they have to sit down and really think about it to say, what is it specifically that gets me fired up? The other one is volunteering or participating in various activities. So if you think you're interested in something, it's very different than actually going out and trying it, doing an internship, volunteering, asking somebody if you can get a job in a particular industry, going to an audition. Those kinds of experiences will give you a far better understanding of what you might want to do for the future. So I'll tell you what, I've got a list for this week, and I thought maybe I'd run through a few of these different ideas. And I will tell you that it kind of amazed me. I asked my wife, who has a certification in this area of career exploration, if she would put together a list of different ways that you can explore careers. And then I went about doing it myself. And when we compared them, they were almost identical. So I don't know if that
fantastic.
means accuracy or just the fact that we live together, so we talk about this stuff way too much.
Right.
But so number one, we just talked about, and that is knowing yourself. You know, what's your personality? What's your lifestyle? What are your passions? What are your natural talents? What do you guys think?
You know, I could say for myself, I knew that one of my lifestyle goals was to have a family. And in the field that I worked in, you know, that I was studying, you know, if you run off to New York, that may not be where things can lie for you. And I mean, I chose my graduate school for the highly academic reason that my girlfriend was within commuting distance, and she's my wife now, so that paid off great. But you know, I one of the things I was thinking about the other day when we were talking, the importance of passion in what you're studying. Because if you want to be someone who's truly great, this has to be your be all and end all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you willing to be obsessive about your craft or whatever it is that you do? And that takes a higher level of investment. You know, you have to. I had a theater director who used to say, and I'm sure you've all heard some version of this, don't do theater unless you can't do anything else. You know, so that level of commitment and obsessiveness in always working on perfecting your craft is a part of that. So you have to be willing, if you want to make it,
Sure.
to try to be the best in what it is that you do. So I think having that passion connection is important for that.
Well, commitment is an absolute necessity for success for all students. I try to tell students when they come into school that it is advantageous if they've picked a major and if they have a really clear pathway about what they want to do with that major, because it gives you fuel. You know, it keeps you committed. You're going to stick with it and you're going to complete. Life is littered with people who had big ideas, but they didn't have the passion and they weren't willing to put the effort forward to be able to get done. Same with, as just a different example, entrepreneurship. You know, there are every day across America, there are millions of people who say, you know, I should start a company that does this. But do they?
Right.
No. And the only way it works is if you really have a passion and a commitment. So to start out for your career exploration, you know yourself. If you tend to be an introvert, think about the kinds of work that you might want to pursue. It doesn't mean as an introvert that you can't get up in front of crowds. I have lots of colleagues here at the college who are introverts, and they get up and they speak and they do just great, but it takes a lot of energy.
That's right.
For them to do that. So, you know, that's a big piece of it. And you mentioned this, and you're absolutely spot on, Tony. It's lifestyle. You know, I have so many people who say, I want to be in sports medicine. I want to be an athletic trainer. And I say, cool. Do you think someday you want to have kids? And many times they say, yeah, absolutely. I say, okay, great. Do you think they're going to be athletes? Because typically when people go into athletic training, they have an athletic history, a background.
Sure.
So I say, do you think that those kids, are you going to want them to be in sports? Well, yeah, definitely. I said, do you want to watch them?
Right.
And about that time, the wheels start to turn, you know, and students will say, well, yeah, I'd like to watch. Would you like to coach them? Like, would you like to coach Little League or something? Well, yeah. Okay, just understand that if you're an athletic trainer, you're going to be working at the exact same time that your kids are in practice, are in games that you might be coaching. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Just understand what the give and take is for it.
That's right.
Asking parents, teachers, professors, other responsible advisors, their impressions of you. So you need to know yourself, but quite often it's advantageous to hear how other people perceive you as well.
I think it's really important to also have that, because if you establish a relationship with those professors and teachers that think highly of you, they can be references for jobs in the future.
Super smart. You're right. Absolutely. I have so many great relationships with students, and only after the fact do they realize that that relationship could be advantageous when they start applying to grad school or applying for jobs, whatever the case might be. They're like, wait, I know a president. That might be a good, it might be a good reference. It's like, yeah, could be kind of helpful. Nothing wrong with it. So you are right. There's a real advantage to that.
I like the prospect of asking someone though for clear-eyed, cold impression.
Yeah,
that's tough and very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
We had a guest artist in the theater a couple of semesters ago who said one of the things you could do in terms of trying to find acting jobs is to ask people, what actors do you remind them of? And that was to help people understand the type you were, which is a very cold way of looking at it. But the idea of truly asking folks to give an estimation of their impression of you is so good. It's so good. You don't get stronger by having people say great things about you.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there aren't great things to be said about most people. There's something. But being able to identify the blind spots that you have about your work ethic or your abilities is so valuable.
Yeah. Last week I was listening to a podcast, and it's a person who wins national championships in powerlifting, but also has a PhD in nutrition.
Mm.
And he was talking with one of his colleagues about the research they do when they ask people how many calories they burn, or how many calories they eat, or how much exercise they do. And when you do these studies and you ask people to make some estimate, they always overestimate or underestimate with a very positive perspective on their efforts. But when you actually start doing the research, you find out, yeah, maybe you had more calories than you thought you ate, or maybe you didn't burn quite as many calories as you thought you burnt. It's just human nature, right? So sometimes it's really good to ask somebody else for their impression of you and take the rose-colored glasses off, right? Another way that you can do some career exploration is brainstorming jobs of interest. This is one that I got to be very honest, I just kind of made up, but it seems to work. I will ask people to go away and just brainstorm a list of a minimum of 10 different jobs that they would find interesting. And part of the reason I ask for at least 10, get past the one or two off the top of the list and start digging a little deeper. But also, if you get 10, 15 different jobs on a list that you might be interested in, you may start to see themes. What is it that these have in common? And that can really be advantageous too. But then you can use a lot of online resources. And the simplest one, Google every one of those jobs on your list and ask yourself, what do I love about this? What do I hate about it? How much am I going to get paid today? How much am I going to get paid 10 years from now if I'm doing this, right? And it helps you to better understand where that career path is and where it will go for the future. And quite often when I ask people to come back with their research, and they will very quickly say to me, yeah, I decided I hate this job. And the big question is, why? What caused you to hate it? One of the things I often tell parents, because parents will come to me and they'll say, okay, I've got a 16-year-old and you're telling my 16-year-old to do career research. My 16-year-old can't figure out what they want to wear this morning and you want them to pick. And I said, okay, it's not always about picking what you want to do for a career. Sometimes it's about eliminating what you don't want to do and kind of narrowing it down. But then the second part is you're not necessarily picking a career. You may be picking a career pathway.
Sure.
So let me explain. There are a lot of students who show up here at Gordon. We have an amazing nursing program. And there are a lot of people who show up and say, well, I want to be a nurse. Why? Well, I want to be in healthcare. That's great, but you didn't answer my question why you want to be a nurse. So it's nice that you've narrowed it down to healthcare, but there are 1,000 different careers in healthcare that you could pursue. You don't have to necessarily be a nurse. It's just an easy go-to because when we think of healthcare, we think of nurses and doctors, right? Taking career assessments. So have you guys ever taken any career assessments?
Not since high school.
No?
No.
No, I have never done that. I mean, when I was in high school, we did something similar to finding different jobs. We had to pick a few different colleges, and then it was linked to a website that all of the degrees they offered at those colleges also listed jobs that that degree could give you, and then those jobs listed like an annual salary and things like that. So I did that in high school.
That's good. No, that's great. It's a great start. I think it's worth it for anybody and everybody to take a career assessment. And they can be based on a lot of things. They can be based on Jungian psychology, which is kind of the basis for personality types and some of those other kinds of work. But it's a great way for you to better understand yourself, as these different instruments will lead you to lists of different jobs. But then you're right back to, okay, go do the research, find out which ones you like and which ones you don't like. But they can be very, very cool. If you're interested in that kind of career assessment, you can get those here at Gordon State from the counseling department. But you can also get them if you are in high school. You can usually go to your high school counselors and you can get some kind of help from them with different assessments too. Conducting informational interviews is another way that you can do career exploration. So let's talk about that. You know that somebody's an attorney. You want to be an attorney. Go set an appointment and just call them up and be very honest. Hey, I'm trying to figure out if I want to be an attorney someday. I'd just like to speak to you for 15 minutes. Really appreciate it if you tell me a little bit about what you do as an attorney. And it can give you a really good perspective in a very short period of time. Have you guys ever done anything like that?
My uncle Peter, he also works in the industry that I want to get into, and I've never had to look up professionals and ask for advice. I just I'm lucky to have family in the industry, so my mom's entire side of the family is artists in New York and in the Philippines and all over the world. So having that and having people I can go to be like, hey, do you have any advice? And my uncle actually gave me the advice of, do you want to be in film? There's a lot of jobs you can do in film. He does construction, so he's not on camera, but he's on the sets and getting to make the cool things that you see. And he was like, you could start as a PA and work your way up and do things like that, which a lot of people do. And you can go to the GFA, which is the Georgia Film Academy, and you can get baseline certificates in being a PA, being an editor, being an olive post in.
Are you going to tell our listeners what a PA is?
A PA is a production assistant.
There we go.
Sorry, I forget that not everyone knows abbreviations. And it's basically like an errand boy on set, and there's a lot of them because there's so many moving parts that they just help guide things along. And that's a really baseline job that you can get on set without having any experience. And that's what I learned from going to my uncle and us having those conversations of, this industry is cool, how do we get into it?
It's great.
It seems like another way to conduct those interviews to tap into some of those things we were talking about earlier in terms of personality and lifestyle. You know, my colleague in the theater department and we took a Georgia Film Academy class, and one of the things they required us to do was to attend. They had some guest lectures where alumni of the program would talk about what it was like to work in the industry, and they talked about how a 12 to 13 hour day is the norm. How you could look at somebody the wrong way and get fired. You know, lots of things in that line. And, you know, not going to lie, dipping my toe in that water sounded very attractive. And then when I realized at my age, I'm not actually interested in pulling 13-hour days. We do that in the theater for about 2 days out of every run when we are going into tech rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of being in tech rehearsal all the time, I know that's not something that my family lifestyle, that doesn't fit. But I thought it was a really valuable thing. But that you know, talking to that attorney and going, well, how much time are you going to spend with your family if that's something that you value?
Yeah, right along the same line, I was talking to an advisor a number of years ago about my interest in being a president. I was already in higher ed, but it was a question of, do I want to go after a presidency? And this person said that one of the things presidents struggle with is defining the line between your personal life and your professional life. It tends to overlap a lot.
Sure.
And you have to be comfortable with that. Now, frankly and fortunately, I'm very comfortable with it. And maybe more importantly, my wife is very tolerant of it. So it works for us. But those are the little things you don't know until you go talk to somebody who has walked in those shoes.
Right.
To be able to better understand it. I was going to go to law school immediately after my undergrad. And I was all ready to head out. And I thought, you know, maybe it'd be a good idea to talk to a couple of attorneys. And after having a conversation with them, I said, no, I don't think so. And there was an old TV show many, many years ago called LA Law. And people thought that that's what law school and a law career would be like. And I think there were a lot of people who ended up disenchanted because they found out that's not exactly the lifestyle of an attorney. You know, today we have that with CSI, right?
Sure.
We have to constantly tell people, yeah, you're probably not going to live that same lifestyle that they have on CSI. So it is valuable for that reason. We talked a little bit about volunteering and internships. You guys ever do any internships?
I'm in an internship right now. I'm an intern in the marketing department of Gordon State College. And I've been able to do all of the things that I like in this internship. I get to do creative brainstorming for concepts of videos that we want to do. I get to execute those ideas and then I get to edit them, and yay.
And your boss for that internship is in the room as we speak.
Yes, she is.
She's going to stay silent. I can tell by the look on her face. But she is in the room evaluating you as we speak. Internships, a lot of people don't realize a couple things. Internships are a huge pathway to an ongoing position. Very, very often after people do an internship, especially in their later years of college, they will get an offer if there are jobs available immediately following that internship. So it's really an extended job interview in that internship, and it gives the employer the opportunity to really check you out and decide if you are a good investment for them. And frankly, that's one of the things that employers are thinking about. You can also take a class or earn a certification. And I'm going to talk about my youngest son, who was in logistics and supply chain management and really wanted to explore other career paths. And one of them was health and nutrition. So he went out and took a national certification test for nutrition, had to do a lot of homework. And fortunately for him, I think it was a program where you could go at your own pace. And so he cruised through it at a very high rate of speed, loved it, was fascinated with the topic, but said nothing I would want to do full time for the rest of my life. That is valuable in a variety of ways. Now it's changed how he eats, how he thinks about food, how he thinks about exercise. And he's way more knowledgeable, but he's decided on a completely different career path. That's not a fail in career exploration. I think that's actually a win when you learn that's not a path that I want to take.
Sure. And you're continuing lifelong learning when you do that sort of thing anyway.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it can be advantageous for personal development. I took a non-credit graduate certificate in finance and investing from a university in Switzerland, online. And it really doesn't help me at all in my work life. But sometimes those things can be valuable in your personal life. And one of the reasons that I was looking at it was someday when I retire, would I want to go into finance, into that industry? And I think I decided no. But it was still valuable information. There's only a couple other things that I would like to suggest for career exploration. And one of them is plan A, B, and maybe even C. So this is where I have to talk about, in general, all three of my kids. Every one of them's on plan B. So every one of them started school with a specific major and a specific career path in mind. One of them changed as they were graduating with their undergrad. One of them changed while pursuing their bachelor's degree. And one of them graduated, got a job, worked at it for about 3 or 4 years, and is now on plan B. So it's not unusual at all. The reason I think that every student should have a plan B is it is so easy to run out of gas if you decide that your major is not what you want to do for a career. But if you have a second plan, it's much easier to make that transition and just keep going so that you can get your degree done and you can figure out what you want to do after that. So those plans, A, B, and maybe even C, can be extremely useful, which takes me to the last topic that I had on my list, which is multiple career paths. So these days in America, we're living much longer lives. And I think there are a lot more people who are re-careering, and they are choosing to pursue a career for about 20 years, maybe 30 years, and then re-career, do something completely different. So I think that plan A, plan B, and maybe even plan C can be advantageous as you start thinking about what you want to do with your next step in your life. Tony, you got plans for re-careering after retirement, or maybe, dare I say, before?
I have not had plans for re-careering. That's a really interesting idea, though.
It's worth thinking about.
There is an online content creator that I follow. Her name is Sydney, and she is a part of a YouTube group called Offline TV. And she is late 20s, and she's already had 4 different career paths. She started off in healthcare and sports medicine. And then she moved to geriatric care. And then she moved to being an online content creator and she had different career paths all along the way, doing different things. And yeah, she's almost 30 years old and has lived like 4 different lives, but she has enjoyed all of them, and all of them got her to where she is now. So
Yeah. You know, one thing that fascinates me, and I know we are out of time, but one of the things that fascinates me are polymaths, which are people who have incredible skills in a variety of different areas. So I was listening to a podcast last week, and it was this person who is responsible for a lot of big investments in the finance industry, but she's also an accomplished jazz musician. And she ran track at USC, and the list goes on, right? And a lot of people, they find that they need a multiple set of outlets, some career and some personal, but quite often what was personal can migrate to be your next career path. So it's just great to be able to keep those options open and explore throughout a lifetime.
something we talk about a lot in this podcast is trying things to see what works and what doesn't, whether that's in your career, life, or anywhere else. And as the producer of this podcast, we are doing just that with the format of our episodes. We'd love to hear feedback or advice from our listeners to find out what makes the Bed Podcast for you. What are some careers that you, our listeners, would love to hear about? If you have any questions or ideas you'd like to talk to us about, you can contact our email, movingforwardpodcast@gordonstate.edu.
Well, I think we've exhausted this topic for now. Any final comments, guys?
I think I'm good for today.
Sounds good. We will be back with our next episode, but in the meantime, you can always reach out to us, and we look forward to talking to you again with Moving Forward.